Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, it is a honor for me to be here. Really, it is an honor, and it's my first time in the Ukraine. I spent a lot of time in Romania and in Russia and in all the other countries, but I never was here. So it is really the premiere for us to talk to each other, and sorry that I can't do it in your mother tongue. I prefer to do it in the Latin of the financial and economic business, and that is English. Yeah, thank you for this warm welcoming, Yuri. It is for me a great day. Before I came to your university together with one of our teachers, that is Professor Buttiglione. He is also here, and he made some lectures in this day. And Professor Buttiglione was the Minister of Culture of the Republic of Italy. And then he was the Minister for European Affairs. And now he is member of the Italian Parliament, Camera dei Deputati. And we are working a long time together, starting with the Catholic University of Lateran. That is a mother university of the Holy Father. It is a mother university of 176 different Catholic universities around the world. And so I studied in my first life philosophy and theology, together with a little professor. He was professor in Regensburg, that is a little town in Bavaria. And the name of this professor was Josef Ratzinger, and became later the Pope Benedict XVI. So I had a big luck that I wrote my diploma thesis with Ratzinger in dogmatic. And later I made my PhD under his guidance. And that was a PhD in the field of business ethics. But as you can see, in the old days, that was not so popular to talk to other people about business ethics. But now everybody is talking about business ethics. If it is the right inflation, I'm not sure, but you can read it on a minimum. But by the other hand, it's happened every day, a lot of accidents in the economic world and in the political world that shows us how important it is to study business ethics. So I had a second professor that was Rocco Buttiglione. He was a professor for anthropology, and welcome to this class. This is the most important man which we have as Germans in the Italian policy, because he speaks so many languages, including an excellent German, better than some Germans are. So, and my third professor was the General Secretary of the Fédération Internationale des Universités Catholiques, Professor Biffy. And then I had 3 years ago the honor that His Holiness Pope Francis appointed me to the Foundation Council of the Lateran Foundation, and authorized me to work for the Papal Lateran University in all dioceses around the world, in such items as we have to discuss with your spectabilities here in during these days, especially with Yuri. When I finished my study, my first job was to work for the Bishop Conference, Catholic Bishop Conference in Bonn. That is a former main city of Germany before the reunion. And I worked as an advisor of multinational companies around the world, for example, Nestle or VW do Brasil, and they invited in this time theologians to help these companies in the fights with the trade unions, Portuguese trade unions in Brazil, because that was the time of the Theologia de Liberación, and the trade unions was very astonished when I came in the meeting and was presented by the company. Oh, that is our theologian there. So afterwards I was called to the Institute of the German Economy in Cologne, and in this time I worked very hard together with the Vatican, and we supported in this time all the academic organizations in the former DDR. We invited professors from all over the world in different faculties. We paid it with money from the government, and we sent it to East Berlin. There the Stasi was looking on it, but we could invite all these professors, and at the end it was a little stone for the destabilization of the DDR, at least because they had now directly contact to the western part of Germany. You have more experience, I think, in your country as I. First of all, it is my responsibility and my honor to bring greetings from a guy who is very important for Ukraine on our view. His name is Elmar Brok. Elmar Brok was a long time the head of the Committee for Foreign Affairs of the European Parliament. He is still in the European Parliament. But since 2 months he changed his responsibility. Now he is working for all the parties in Europe on the side of the Christian Democrats for all the items of the coming up Brexit, or perhaps not coming up Brexit. Yeah, it is not sure that we will have in the next week the same situation as we have today. Perhaps some rumor is upcoming to see that the British people not so satisfied what they have themselves decided. Elmar Brok is sending me as his friend who gives you greetings, because in his heart is the Ukraine the number one in Europe. He was on the Majdanek in the very important days, and he is always fighting for the thesis that the Ukraine is part of Western Europe, and that is why we are working in this together. So I'm really proud to speak of representatives of the Ukraine, this great culture of Europe and the great nation of Europe, and be here today with you as young academics is already a goal of international relations. That's what we have done in the last decades, especially Professor Buttiglione, to create relationships between the European nations together under the umbrella of the common European idea. My professional life went in another direction. I am now entrepreneur since decades. I started in the furniture industry of my father-in-law, and then I changed to the supplier in automotive industry, and then I made more than 10 years fashion all over the world. I was a marketing and sales member of the board of the company Stallman, and Stallman is the biggest producer of ladies' wear, so I had a very nice time. First of all with theologians and philosophers, and at the end with mannequins. Then I set up 17 ago, my own company. It's named Chorus AG. Chorus, that is the group of people who are singing in the liturgy. Yeah, that was the idea. And we are an advisory firm for big companies on the interfaces between politics and economy, politics and corporate business. So we are since 17 years the political advisor of Microsoft in Europe, for example, or with telecommunication and a lot of other mandates. My lecture today for you deals with one important part of international relations, the so-called ethical failures and its consequences in the fields of economy and business. The socio-political discourse about the significance of the economy and its stakeholders greatly flared up. Several failures occurred recently, as you might have heard about in the news. Involved therein are banks, management level of companies of different kind of industries, which seemed to have high ethical standards. The ethical economic violations include tax evasion, embezzlement, manipulation of markets, fraud, compliance and corruption. For example, the software manipulations of German companies in the diesel sector. You have heard about it. In the 21st century, the public voices and media claim louder against entire states, especially the tolerance of these ethical failures in increasing through the wave of freedom of expression. These failures lead to political, economic and ethical crisis and provoke ethical contempt of international relations. For example, the disagreement of European states and human rights issues. I remember Turkey, Russia, refugees crisis, Syria. And in the most important newspaper of Germany was written in the FAZ, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, it reigns a culture which motivates to mistrust and dishonesty. The intensity and complexity of the economic challenges reach a unique and new dimension, so we are lacking experience, knowledge, and models which could show us a fast shift out of such dilemmas. Thereby, the socio-political discussion develops from the explanation of individual economic and political questions to more general debate about the economy in macro and microeconomic aspects. The result is an economic ethically debate, a discussion about finding the meaning and order of values which substantially exceeds the field of economy and general questions of the postmodern age. The new debate leads to think us about which kind of factors ethical failures provoke. One factor which needs to be analyzed is the capitalism and its opportunities and threats. Therefore, I would like to bring you close to an American historian, Joyce Appleby. Was a lady, sorry about that, she died in the last year, who taught for many years at the University of California in Los Angeles and who was president of the American Historical Association. She writes in her book, The Relentless Revolution, I citate, "The reviewers of the capitalismus can be divided into three different groups. Those who turn themselves away from solidarity and ugliness, which can occur by the pursuit of profit. There are against the excess of range of goods and the materialistic attitude of their fellow citizens around the world. The representatives of this critique normally derive from the social or academic elites. The second group excuses the capitalism of the sins of a globalization which increased the opportunities of the wealthy nations to get rich at the expense of the poor and unprotected. The nightmare of the anti-globalization activists is the multinational firm which acts, in their opinion, social irresponsible and without any intuition for the human needs. Reviewers illustrate the multis as gigantic krakens whose tentacles are reaching for every opportunity to make profit, even if it is dubious. The third group is the generally favorable to capitalism but wants to create it more open and fair. It should be equally receptive for the human needs and the outlook for profit. It seems to me that this is the most interesting group, even if it is only because she is the most effective participating to the fight against misery, poverty, and unfairness. So far, this lady, Mrs. Appleby. I like to go a bit deeper than she went in his article. The capitalism critique illustrates deeper levels of postmodern human being, which questions the sense of these economic systems. It is about the question of sense and orientation of life in general. These fundamental questions include the disposition of the human being itself, the aims of the society, the desires for religion and spirituality, and the future of the economic and political systems. Thereby, these questions are not only asked on the meta level of the social discussion and its platforms, but rather extreme in the field of a professional environment of every individual, in the field of the economy, and also in the massively increasing importance of the demand for privacy, the balance between family and personal freedom, and last but not least, the technological revolution which locates the fast change as continuum of the daily experience. After the last decades of a constantly increasing economization of the public and private life, transformation processes with such a fundamental character are arising, which are not only leading to a fundamental questioning of the economization of the whole life, but also creating an intensive demand for the recovery of holism, a comprehensive reality of the human life, and a viable and sustainable exploitation of sense. Characteristic of these transformations are the critical circumstances which let the people doubt on the future ability of the existing. Experiences of loss of justice and solidarity, experiences with the breach of law or every kind from interest manipulation or speculations, from fraud to corruption, experiences with bankers who are not aware anymore of what is greed and hubris, and politicians whose relationship to truth is disturbed, are resulting on the one hand in an atmosphere of depression and frustration, and on the other hand in anger and the spirit of rebellion, or into the opposite according to the emigration in the retreat from social responsibility to lethargy and denial. Students, these phenomena can be called heterogeneous, as well as know the human being was not created as something bad, or that he or she inherits something bad from birth. This kind of behavior is educated through complex systems, with humans created in freedom and with intelligence in the danger of the evil kind who seduce. The postmodern age shows a deeply unsecured human who lost his orientations and idols, who also receives an unstable and unsecured impression from the once meaningful institutions like church, parties, trade unions, and associations, and also the sciences of nature and humanities are reaching their limits due to new challenges, which are especially affecting the ethical fundamentals of economic life. Also, Ms. Appleby is asking such fundamental question: is the high pressure which lasts on the people as a consequence of the ongoing competition and the increasing economization of all areas of life not a price too high to pay for the achieved progresses? Why are the people under the reign of capitalism more prosperous but not noticeably happier? Is the economic success measurable in money a suitable indicator for the value of a human? All these crises are indeed sources of the manifold problems and obstacles for the human at the beginning of the 21st century, but also times of new departures and new changes, times of reconsideration and renaissance, and thereby times of changes and challenges. The human is on the way back to itself, to a fulfilled life, to holism and balance, to rationality and emotionality. In this respect, the French political scientist Dominique Moïse writes, "You cannot really understand the world in which we are living if you are not taking into account the emotions and trying to understand them." The postmodern human looks for sources and visions in the one-sidedness of the interpretation of life and world, in the one-sided mathematization and a new simplicity, as well as in the renunciation from all the ideologies of growth which are stealing his satisfaction and his luck. The crisis of the economy and its mathematization, and by this its one-sided development, are clarified by the former advisor of the Czech President Václav Havel. His name is Thomas Sedlacek. In his spectacular book from 2012, he gets to the heart of it when he says, "In the last years, the mainstream economy has abandoned original economic topics like ethic and moral, and sometimes it got lost within the refugium of the analytic technical apparatus. We changed the focus of science or extremely strong postponement because we started to use a new language. In a nutshell, the economy has attached too much importance on the mathematical weight and neglected the non-mathematical human in us. The normative economy was replaced by the positive descriptive. But in my opinion, it is dangerous to limit oneself to a positive descriptive economy if this is even possible. This means that you are abstracting from important points and believe that value judgments are non-existent. It can lead us into dangerous dead ends. Moreover, we are neglecting important parts for our lives. Those we are pure mathematical examination is not enough. The horrible experiences with the vices of the humans, with misery and desperation, with failure and illness, with boredom and loneliness, with psychic burdens and conflicts, which failed relationship and desires for lost concealment and loving devotion, with the loss of satisfaction and the inability for gratitude, are shooting for a new beginning, the search for true values, the recovery of the content of great terms like trust and credibility, harmony of ratio et emotio, the reconciliation of tangible and intangible, of personality and dignity, and the recovery of sustainable and credible answers upon the existential question about the where from and where to of the human life and the meaning of its existence as individuum and part of the humankind in total. This is all embedded into the ordinariness of whom the individual cannot escape if he does not want to escape all human connections. The human of the postmodern age is determined by the circumstance and the facticity that spends most of his life is in the surrounding of his gainful employment, and also his leisure time is determined with worries about the material welfare and the realization of material wishes and the material safeguarding of the future. And the postmodern human does not reach any feeling of saturation, and therefore he does not gain any satisfaction. That's why he is mainly focused on the deficits, things he does not have at the moment, what he misses, what is not guaranteed and secured. The resulting restlessness turns him into a creator which never arrives, which turns itself always in new activities, which does not know leisure and balance, the internal and external quietness, and therefore cannot find silence and stagnations. Diametrically opposed are the feelings that there has no be something behind the things, that the material with all its luck and its patience cannot be the only thing that provides a sense of purpose, that the fundaments have to be recovered to achieve the true fulfillment and to find the truth. Thereby, the postmodern human is not focused on his egomanic self, but rather understands itself directed to the people, those he loves and those he is beloved from, and frequently those who need his help and are not able to master their life. The force of this growth, within the looking for the transcendence, the mystical and metaphysical. This search is often vague and fluctuating. But the comeback of the religion already started. The interpretation of life only based on rationality did not work, as well as the elimination of faith through science or the prioritization of the material and economic. It is about the postmodern development, the comeback of the religious, like the name of the work of the German theologian Detlef Pollack, who leads with his title The Secularization Thesis ad Absurdum, which are supporting the opinion that through individualization and economization, through pluralization and the spread of modern ways of living, religion and church are losing their relevance in the postmodern society. Meanwhile, nearly nobody of the social scientists believes the validity of such statements. Nearly nobody wants to use the term secularization anymore. Therefore, it is a good manner in humanities and social sciences today to renounce oneself from secularization and modernization theories and to dismiss them as something one-dimensional, deterministic, and believing in progress. Religion has also, in state-of-the-art states like the United States of America, an important social standing. It spreads in developing countries in which are the same time processes of industrialization, urbanization, and the increase of education take place. It also gains acceptance in the clerical aligned regions of the Western Europe, what can be indicated by the rise of new religious movements, subjective spirituality, and youth-motivated papal enthusiasm. Based on those signs of a remaining of even increasing relevance of the religions in the modern age, more and more sociologists of religion, historians of religion, and anthropologists of religions are developing alternative models of the secularization theory. We should be better to explain the meaning of religion and its change process in modern societies. As we can see, the current scenarios, cultural, ethical, and religious differences become more clear through discussions about the development and shifting of stable ethical beliefs and contents. Changes and challenges occur in a good and bad way between different societies and their international relations. Waves of movements who scream for freedom and total liberality shake ethical concepts in politics and economics. Therefore, this time of change is a chance for consideration, for reflection, and the time for those who show the postmodern human the fundaments of which everything what we reach is based. The time of philosophers and theologians, the time of sociologists and poets, the time for those who have this courage to witness and confess the truth. The person they meet is not the arrogant denier, the immobile cemented, the conscious atheist and peasant, but rather a seeker, an inquirer who was cut from his roots and deprived from knowledge. What a chance for the mediation and meditation of sense and faith. To satisfy and follow the meaning of the economic and gainful work of the daily life of humans in the 21st century, we are turning towards the situation of those employed persons, who have been chosen to be leader or manager in companies or institutions of the economic world, to carry responsibility and to lead people like you. I have chosen this group in my studies as an example because, on the one hand, she is affected on her own with all the problems of the postmodern human and also experience the consequences of those problems with the confided colleagues. Dear students, you are the future. You need to deal with these challenges already now and especially after your studies. We can teach you the concepts and the theories, but you need to find the solutions in practice to create a better world for the individual human being, and for that we create through the intelligence God gave us. You are the key to overcome all the named challenges to create a stable future in economic and politics with healthy ethical milestones for fruitful international relations. Thank you for your listening.
Question. A very practical question.
How late is it?
how to apply the theory to concrete cases. And I will explain you one case we have now in relation between Ukraine and European Union. Ukraine applied for financial help, and there should be allocated the third tranche of this financial help from European Union, 600 million euros, and Ukraine didn't fulfill 4 points out of some 28. Okay, Ukraine didn't qualify for getting this third tranche. It is postponed, but one of 4 points that Ukraine didn't fulfill was canceling the limits or even the impossibility to export raw wood to European Union from Ukraine.
Why?
And European Union wanted that we lift up this law that doesn't allow this. But if we look on our forests, which are deforested now, and this claim from European Union, either you continue to deforestate your forest or you receive this support. What are values in this, I would tell, blackmailing?
Look, if you are interested in these worlds to get some financial support from another person or another institution, you have always conditions, first of all. And nobody is accepting that before he told you what kind of conditions you have to reach to get it. But that is not the end. The end is that in the concrete world, you can get in a really dilemma, because everybody is talking about wood. It's so worthful for us and for the ecological interests of the humans. And by the other way, if you look deeper in the economic circumstances of this business, you have wood for export, and wood you keep it as your own lung to breathe fresh air. So that is, first of all, in every cases, there is never, also in ethical questions, only one way. The only way is the ethics themselves. But you need an ethic depend to the circumstances. That's why we are talking always about many ethics. And ethic, students, don't change it with the term of morale. That is a total other story. But ethic means responsibility. And in every case, you have different and alternative ways to realize that. But especially in front of the European Union, the European Union is based on a lot of constitutions and letters and agreements which based on values. And everybody in Europe is also talking like Angela Merkel. She is talking permanently about values. And they have the name of the values, subsidiarity, for example. But who is the guy, who is the lady who can define what that means, subsidiarity? In some economical sides of the European Union, it was used as one of the principles of the Catholic teaching, but nobody in the parliament has, without the support of Professor Buttiglione, has an idea what that means, subsidiarity, in modern world or in the contracts of Manchester, of Maastricht, and all this kind of agreements. That is my answer. And what is the reaction for that? If you not pass 4 points of the conditions, go back and speak about it. That is the most important thing. Speak about, not like in the university. Yeah, you have a target of 100 points, and if you are 96, you not pass the tests. And there is no chance of the students to say, let us talk about it. But in the political life, it's a total other story. You need ambassadors who are fighting for your interests, and that is most a fight against another person who has another interest. And to find the right way on an ethical relationship must be the target, but not with a habit of having the own truth in yourself. European Union is everything but not the church.
May I, Professor? I wish to tell a story. Several years ago, I was a young man, a comparatively young man, and I became Minister for European Affairs of the Italian Republic. And I went to an old friend, the great Chancellor, Helmut Kohl, to ask for some counsel. And he taught me a few things about Europe and about politics. And first of all, he told me, you must always say no. Whatever they propose to you, your first answer must be no. Never say yes before you are completely convinced that this is in the interest of your country. Before saying yes, make a consultation of all the people interested in your country on that problem. Listen to them, because they will have to carry the burden of the decision. And if you are not convinced, if you cannot convince them, don't say yes. But when you say yes, you must keep the word you have given. Because politics is made of credibility. If everybody knows that he can rely on your word will have a high value, like gold, like money. I promise I give, it is sure I give, and then I can have better conditions. And Helmut told me, the great problem of Italians, not of Ukrainians, of Italians in the Union, is that they say yes too easily. And very often they come back and they say, no, we can't. To me, it has been a very valuable suggestion. If you want to make politics, I think it is the same in business. Don't say yes too easily. But when it is yes, it must be yes forever.
And it is not so difficult to learn this, because that in our private interests are the same principles working than in the economy, because it is nothing more than human life. If somebody has a girlfriend or a girlfriend has a boyfriend, and it is time to say, yes, I'm yours. I like that to be together with you for a long time, and I will have the exclusivity of this relationship. What you are doing that then? It is really necessary that we can trust us, because you know exactly, if you say to me, that is my price today, and you meet him tomorrow morning, then you have to get the same price. Otherwise, you are not buying. And the market is brutal in this. If you lose your credibility in life and in the economical world, that is the best way to destroy any political influence. Nobody is believing in politicians who are changing the opinion about things, only looking what is better for my own power. And that is the situation which we have all over the world. That is losing the trust, losing the confidence. And look to the big banks like the Deutsche Bank. They have a big advertising campaign since years about confidence. But then you can see in the board they are organizing criminal things all over the world and asking for the confidence of the clients. That is what the clients are not accepted, and that is what the market not accepted. That is Adam Smith pure. And so, I know exactly, if you go in this evening in the next discotheque, there are a lot of youngsters in your age. You are telling the sense of my life is life. The sense of my life is making every 10 minutes another activity. I'm never based, and I'm only interested to get more money because I need more fun, I need more consumption, and so on. You have all the experience themselves. But at the end, what is really the fundament of human being? And that is much more than materialistic and hedonism in what we are using in the economy. And at least as an entrepreneur, I can tell you, if you are try to be an ethical-oriented entrepreneur, you can be sure that on the middle time phase, you will be economical-wise more successful without unethical, without ethical values. And that is the situation. In most of the universities in Europe, for economy, it is very seldom that a professor is teaching there something about this, by one hand. And by the other hand, every companies have fine brochures and papers to present how good they are. And the consumer, you can see it in the TV, the consumers are waiting, when is the next scandal on the TV? Yeah? And in the last years, in the last minimum of since 2008, from Lehman Brothers starting, you have it monthly. that things are happened in the economy which never was understand from the people who founded a company or was a founder of the theory of economic. Everybody who gave us the orientation knew exactly that you can't survive without an ethical construction. And that is not in every case in this society to be near to the church or to be near to the religions. But everybody who is in distance to church and religion and spirituality, he knows exactly that the values are coming from religion and from faith. And that is the reality why it is so important that university like this university has a profile for a believer construction of values.
I have another question, also a very practical one. In Ukraine, there are some discussions in the parliament among political parties. What should be our behavior in economy? Should we have some protectionism, at least for some economic sectors? Or should we allow the invisible hand of market to regulate all things in the economy? And one of the example people use, one says that if we are on equal footing and we have equal opportunities, we have to allow people to compete. But how will we compete if I am 40 plus and someone 5 years old? How can we compete in, let's say, boxing or running? It is sure who will win. How should we prepare our economic sectors for the competition? Should we leave this 5-year boy to compete with Bosch, Siemens, or Mercedes? Or we have to make some conditions to let this 5-year boy to grow in order to be ready for this competition?
Good question, very good question. First of all, what does it mean, competition? Competition means that everybody who take part in this competition has the same chances and the same conditions in which he can invest his own power, his own intelligence, and that is in most of the cases against your picture, not a question of age. Sometimes a young man or wife in the age of 25 is much better than a guy who has 40 years experiences. And at the same time, you can see more and more, ladies and gentlemen, that the young generation is more looking for security than to take place in the competition of free societies. And the biggest priority of life is to have freedom. And without any freedom, you will never have a good competition between all the different humans. And how can I get it? I get it when I see that everything what is given to the state is economical-wise not successful. That is the history of your country, that is the history of my country, that is the history of whole Europe. In the case that somebody is thinking it is better to give the money to the state than to private entrepreneurs, he will not have the better profit. So, and Adam Smith, the invisible hand in the market is the best regulation, because in the market everybody has a chance to make the own thing, and to make the own ideas happen. That is for that is necessary that the states give the freedom, and that is based in the most important thing, also in the discussion about values, to accept law and the legislation of countries. If you not agree to accept this way, then you can go the way of the Trumps of the world.
You talked a lot about ethics, and I'd like to ask you a little practical question about actually enforcement of ethical values. So ethic is really a wide spectrum. It isn't covered by public law, it isn't even covered by some corporate, let's say, contract law, when you define what's good, what's not good. And I'd like to ask you, is it reputational, reputational enforcement, or is it maybe some public opinion control when people know that something isn't done with ethical values, or I don't know. So really interested in some practical aspect of enforcement. And other question I'd like to ask you about, you talked a lot about politicians who lose their trust when they promise something and then they just don't do it, or do the other thing. And I'd like to ask you, what can we do when we actually have this situation from independence of Ukraine? Actually, most of our politicians just do it this way, and actually there is just not enough new faces. There is nothing actually to choose from. People actually can't vote for anyone else because they are just the same, and there is a really low ethical standard for Ukraine politicians. And I don't know, maybe you can tell us something how public society can improve this situation.
I think we have to prepare a habit, a personal habit, to be responsible for the society. You are here in this room, are the elite of this society. Has nothing to do that you are better than the normal worker on the road. But if you have this privilege to be intelligent and to have the chance to develop your intelligence, then you have to feel responsible for the community of your state, for the community of Europe. And the best way to do it on the concrete way, Yuri is always asking for concrete things. Concrete things are only happened in the right way if the fundament and the theory is based, and this fundament has to be right. Then you have also a good practical ways. And one way is the only alternative to what we are doing. The alternative is to go in the parties and to go in the political world, go in the political movements like we have in France today with Macron and such movements, yeah, that is not the old traditional party, and take responsibility of a minimum of 2 years. Also we have a very big tradition in the universities in Germany to be active and engaged in politics, also in the university. You can start it there. You can start it in the high school. Yeah? But you have to give your own capacity, your own charisma to invest like an entrepreneur invests in his market. You have to invest it at first in the society. And how you can learn that? if you are a small boy, what was it, age 5? Yeah, you have to get experiences in your own family, and that is much difficulter, more difficult than it was in the last decades, because most of the families in the Western-oriented countries are destroyed. Yeah, that is the biggest problem which we have in our society. It's not to have the right economical ideas. We have, on the human being side, a lot of problems which we can't sort out. Yeah? We have every second marriage is divorced in Germany, or is destroyed. Sometimes on commercial wise, they are thinking not about a new marriage, but that the interests are only money. But in fact, the life of the family, that is the only location where children can learn what that means to invest in a community. And this is a habit which I recommend for you, because it is a very interesting life to be a politician. But the only thing why we are skeptical about it is that you can't see that somebody of these guys are a lucky politician and a successful politician. But for you, as a historical point, is you can speak with such a politician. He's sitting there. I'm not in the parliament, he is in the parliament. But he is in the parliament not only in this building of the Italian parliament, Camera dei Deputati, he is politician day and night. Yeah. And that is the only way to be active and persuade and with principles and looking for the truth behind the things. And it is more concrete than you think, Yuri. Let me ask, who is interested to take place, to take a participation in a political party? 1, 2, 3, excellent. No, oh, 4, yeah, fine. 6, 7, I'm waiting. Look, at the end, the next question is, how can I organize it? That is the concrete way. How can I organize it? And from my point of view, in the responsibility of a university is to show the students what is the type of participation of the society. You can learn that here, and you have the right to learn it here. Okay? It's better to learn that and to manage something in the political life than to spend too many days on the Majdanek. Don't forget that. And we made in Germany the biggest mistake, which you can imagine. That was the time after our reunion. We thought we make a lot of motorways there. We are making all the modern public sectors over there, as we had it in the western part of Germany. And after 25 years, you can feel that 25% of these people who are living there are not satisfied with this new situation, because it is not so easy to live in freedom. It is not easy to take responsibility. It's much better in feeling to be guided by other people. But that is not your right as the privileged elite of Ukraine to look for this kind of life. Your generation can bring this Ukraine, this big country in Europe, in a new generation. And you have to do it themselves. don't expect it from the politicians who are running these businesses now in Kiev. And if we can tell our experience to you, and if we can work together in cooperation with the different universities, then you get enough support for that. But support is in addition to what you are doing themselves. And if you are in the position to look to become an entrepreneur, then you have it all off your own shoulder. And then you are not responsible in the next day for you as the big successful entrepreneur. The first experience of an entrepreneur is to have a lot of problems. You have it off your own shoulders, and you are responsible not only for you, you are responsible for all your collaborators which you have invited to go this way with you. That is not comfortable, but it is a lot of fun, and it is quite interesting. And I spent now more than 40 years in every continent of the world, and saw what it is possible doing by humans from China until Brazil or whatever. That makes really sense to live for this, but not only for money.
You mentioned that there are people who don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And in the sense of ancient Greek word, they are idiots. They stay at home. They don't want to get out of their home to be present on the public square.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there is another name which was shaped by Aristotle about such people. They are slaves by nature.
Yeah.
And maybe it is good for these people to be ruled by someone, and maybe it is good for this person who is ruling them, and it is good for the common good to have such slave by nature, because if a slave by nature get to the power by some fortune, it is very dangerous for a country, for business, for everyone. Maybe it is moral obligation to rule such people and never let them to participate on the public square in any decision.
But could you imagine this generation in a university of Germany is sitting in the universities, and more than 50% of all the students are looking for an employment from the state. We are one of the richest countries of the world. Everybody knows, the baby and the old boy in the age of 90 knows exactly that our riches is coming from the entrepreneurship of the Germans in different types. But the majority of the students today, in this actual situation, it doesn't exist unemployment in Germany. We have not enough workers. We can give thousands and hundreds of thousands of jobs to other people, but the own youth is looking for the security more than in creating an own idea what is going on in my life in the future. And that is really not a good situation, because we know exactly that after 25 years you can have all the consequences of that, and then we have problems from the age, problems from this not understandable habit to be against foreign people in our country, for example. The fear of Germans against foreigners is not understandable. It is just the opposite what we have done in the commercial development, yeah? In the economy development of our country. First of all, the Poland came and have worked for us in the coal mines. Then the next was the Italian came, yeah, and then in these old days people from Yugoslavia, and then we had the invasion of Turkish people on Portugal and in Spain, yeah. You can eat in every culture which you can imagine in my country. But if we are talking, can you hire a young man in the age of 17 to Germany? It is in the bureaucracy accident which you can imagine. We have 170,000 positions and jobs in the craftsmanship for people who are not on a higher level prepared. We can't find the use, but we can't invite the youth of Spain or Italy, come to us, learn our language, and then you can work with us. Perhaps you go back after 10 years or whatever. It is not possible because the resistance against a foreigner is unbelievable.
So that's for me, yes?
Yeah.
Thanks. Good evening, my name is Alexandra. I'm studying here at Etika-Politika-Ekономіка. And just right now I heard about fear of young people in Germany, but maybe is it this natural fear of the people, because maybe about previous generation was the fear and the previous, but it's the temporary situation. Maybe after 25, as you said, they will be thinking about creation and some ideas. What about the previous generation? Maybe you had this fear too, but right now in other country, sometimes personally I have the fear about my children in the future, because we should create this country without war and other problems. So maybe it's natural, but not the fear about foreigners and refugees. I don't understand the young Germans in that way, but maybe you have this fear too in the past.
Yeah, the question, I understand the question. But the reality is as follows. We have the fear in Germany. That is fact. But we took 1 million in 1 year refugees in our society. If I look to Poland, Hungary, or whatever, that is a total other situation. The people in Czechia don't accept that. They are against German policy because we look for people who flew away from the war in Syria, from the war in the Iraq, in Yemen, in Palestine, and whatever. It is a question of value, how you have to react in this situation. Then we have, with this mass of 1 million, a lot of problems. Because, for example, they came, and with all the refugees came a lot of terrorists and whatever, and we made a lot of mistakes to control that in the right way and very fast. But that is a total other situation. In Russia, it is not possible to send 1 million from other countries and to say, look, took them in your schools, for example. We have schools where our German children are sitting as a minority. That is totally new for us. The only thing what I can announce is it exists one sector which is totally in another style. Because I'm the consultant of the CFO of Bayern München, the soccer team, successful soccer team. But what is the German soccer without foreigners? It's impossible. You can't organize a soccer game without foreigners. It's impossible. Every teams in Germany have a majority of people from other countries. And in this case, everybody accepted in total. But if somebody is asking for a kindergarten place, then German parents says to the sisters of the church, don't take this child from Syria because they have no knowledge in German, and my daughter has then disadvantages when they are together with this kind of things. That is racism. And it is your generation to change it. Believe me, after 27, you can change a human only in very, very small ways. So that means it is your responsibility to change it as a habit, as a culture of a modern society. And the Ukraine has the power to do it because you are so big in Europe, you are in an excellent geopolitical situation here, and you have to fight to sort out all the other problems which you get from your past under the Soviet Union. And Yuri told me about reforms on the police side, reforms in the tax system, and all these kind of things. That is really a hard work. I know that because we are talking in universities always in general, yeah, but in the detail of bureaucracy, it is not so easy. And if you are in a country which is very popular to be corrupt, you have to understand that corruption is not a system to give an advantage. Corruption is always a disadvantage because it is your child that have not the same chance as a child from the neighbor. That is corruption, not more. Not to get a bottle of vodka earlier.
Verzeihen Sie mir bitte, Sie sprachen über die Westis und Ostis, aber es gab einen großen Unterschied zwischen diesen Leuten bevor dem 18. Jahrhundert, 19. Jahrhundert auch, nicht wahr? Nicht nur zur Zeit, aber früher auch, nicht wahr?
Але це треба, я перепрошую, питання треба перекласти, бо не всі розуміють німецьку мову.
I'm asking about the difference.
She asked if it was in the 18th and 19th, in the 17th and 18th century, not in the same situation as we have today. Yeah, yeah, but in these centuries, Germany was nothing more than small cities, independent, everybody against the next city. That was our situation. This model of Europe is a model of peace. And to divide it, countries, through nationalism, in smaller parts, is the best way that you not survive with this society. That's what we learned from the history of Preußen, the history of the structure of Europe before we set up Germany with the revolution of 1848.
But are you sure that in the future the people that live in the east of Germany will be the same that those living in the western part?
No.
I think their mentality and mindset is quite different.
No. The situation is totally in another circumstances. For example, people flew from France for religion reasons to Preußen. And Preußen needs them for the agriculture area, yeah? Cheaper workers. And they offer them after the French Revolution with the spirit of égalité and fraternité a new chance to live. But it was a poor life. Now, in the eastern part of Germany are sitting 25% of the inhabitants claiming about the situation, crying about their own situation, but very warm in social systems that is, and these social systems are paying every month the money without any working for it. They have the security of a health system. They have the security of courts and law and the right legislation, and that is not in the same situation as we was 200 years before. We needed 200 years to become the situation of today. Yeah? It's not from one day to another. That is my message for the Ukraine. Don't forget, at least to become really a democratic and successful and rich country that needs 200 years. Don't forget that.
But Ukraine was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah.
But nothing came out of that.
Yeah.
We are quite different
Yeah.
from Austrians and Hungarians as well.
Yeah, but it's not Vienna here. And it was not Vienna here. And the Poland are meaning that it is not the Ukraine, it's Poland. That is all arguments from the history. We have to see what is going on for this generation, what are really the most important problem. And the most important problem came from her when she asked, what is the future of my children? What is the situation in which I set children in my own responsibility? Can I get a secured life, and can I guarantee my children that they have a better situation as I have or my parents had? I heard from Yuri, what was the income of your mother monthly? $11. I couldn't understand that. How can you survive 10 minutes with $11? 11 euros.
It was 93.
Yeah.
1993.
Not very long ago.
Talking about political life, is it too early for us, like in the age of 18, 19, to become a party member? Like, just your opinion.
Clear answer. It is, in every case, 3 times better to go in the youth organization of the party than to start in the age of 35. Then the life is gone. There are sitting so many people in competition to you to become leader of the same party. That is really a hard life there. And it is much better to start very early, and but not as an alternative of studies. If you are looking for young people in the parliaments of Europe, and you can find there, in Germany, in Austria, and wherever, these are all people without any finished studies.
Too bad.
And that is the next step is when they are in trouble and they need money, then it is the first door to make corruption. Otherwise, they have no chance. They are still killed when they come out of the parliament in the age of 30 or whatever. What can you do when you are an old wife in the age of 30? And the French people are thinking about how can we put the youth in the age of 17 in our big companies. That is really competition. So that is my experience, a lot more. Yeah? And I was a leader of the Christ Democrats in the city of when I was 15.
So you spoke about Germany, and I'd like to ask you a question about recent elections. And it seems that the Radical Party is gaining traction, gaining popularity in Germany. And do you think in the future can a radical party and maybe form some sort of coalition in the Bundestag and revoke this policy about migrants? Maybe they'll speculate and use populism to harvest fear among Germans and in this sort to gain power. Do you think it's possible to happen, and when can it happen, and is Germany doing something so it doesn't happen?
First of all, the serious answer, we have on the radical rights a new situation. 13% of the German Bundestag is owned by the AfD, that is the name of this radical party on the right. This party is 50% people with protest against the establishment of parties and 50% of neo-Nazis. Yeah? And very often young, and very often young ladies working for this type of parties. But a danger that they can change the political general opinion of the whole popularity is zero. But not only in Germany, also in Netherlands and also in France. Look, Le Pen is after Macron nothing. Yeah? But in every cases, we have young students at the university have no knowledge about Goethe, Schiller, and Thomas Mann, but they are reading again Karl Marx. That is trendy. And but more dangerous is for me the situation of changing of the American society. That is really alarming. But that had nothing to do with the history, yeah? Like we have in Germany. You know? We have experienced what that means to have a dictator. Yeah? On it. But the Americans haven't this kind of experience. And they are, in the majority, not educated to have a political habit, to work for parties. They are only working for elections. Yeah? Like a Hollywood star. That is what they are understanding. But our democratic system is not easy, and it is not perfect, but it is the best system of the world. Thank you for your attention.